Elie Wiesel, who was the Nobel laureate, author, and Holocaust survivor, once said, "The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference." Yeah, sit with that for a moment. And this is significant as I talk about the theme this month for my channel, and the theme for this lunar cycle, which is twofold. It is both courage and discernment. So I wanted to talk first about how this theme of courage emerged. And this is winter time in the Northern Hemisphere, which according to Daoism and Chinese medicine is water season, the time when the element of water is dominant in nature. One of the qualities that's associated with the water element and water season is fear. And I think we, like a lot of us, have been experiencing that recently in one form or another. And, originally, fear being associated with winter and this water season had a lot to do with when we were more agrarian and lived in line with the cycles of nature. Winter could be a scary time if you didn't have a significant harvest. You might not know whether you're going to survive through the winter. So obviously linked to fear. When I was thinking about fear and water and winter, I remembered a quote, which is also significant, similar to the Wiesel quote, but love, the opposite of love not being hate, the opposite of love being fear, which is also a really interesting idea. And that being that, fear is really when we've gone back into that egoic state and we're up here in the mind in our stories freaking out because we have that sense of separation and aloneness. And I think a lot of fear can feel very isolating. And when we are in love deep in the heart, we are much more aligned with our true nature. Our true nature is love. So I was looking for who actually said that quote about the opposite of love being fear, and it's actually attributed to many different people. If anyone has an exact idea and could put it in the chat, I'd really appreciate that. But in doing that research, I came across that Wiesel quote, and it just stopped me in my tracks. I think I had heard it before, but it just gripped me in a new way. And this memory just started flooding in to my mind about a time back in the 90s when I visited an incredible museum in Los Angeles called the Museum of Tolerance, which really strives to educate people about prejudice and bias and how that develops and how it plays out in the world. And part of the museum is dedicated to the Holocaust. So when you go through that portion of the museum on the Holocaust, right before, you're given, I can't remember, I think it was some kind of token or coin. This was 30 years ago. But you're given the name, I believe, of someone connected to the Holocaust. And you know nothing about them other than their name. So I knew I had a woman's name. And you kind of walk through, symbolically walk through this experience of this timeline of the Holocaust with you. And then when you get to the end of the exhibit, you turn in this token and you get a profile of your person with a picture if it's available. And I got this profile of this beautiful little girl, young, who was killed in one of the concentration camps. And although I don't remember her specific name, she has never left my heart. And I think of her whenever I see these kind of gross injustices in the world, or really inhumane treatment of humans and animals. And I always think you know, what would it be like if I was in that situation and nobody cared or paid attention or remembered? And, you know, it really brings me back to this quote by Wiesel when he says that the opposite of love is not hate. Hate does require a certain amount of emotional engagement and attachment, even if it's, you know, in a twisted form. Whereas indifference is really complete absence of concern. And, you know, that's really where injustice can thrive. And I think that's a much greater threat to humanity. So after I had that memory flood, later in the day, I was just getting ready for a class and going through some old notes, and I came across this David Whyte quote, and I'm just going to share it. So David Whyte, the poet, he says, "Wherever we are in life, our call is to pay attention to that place where we are close to tears, where we are aware of being close to what is most important, to where our heart is pointing us. It's in listening from that place. It's from paying attention to that place that our courage comes." So then I got it. I got that, okay, Spirit, my higher self is saying the theme this month is really about courage. And to me, courage is really aligning our words and actions with our deepest held values. And, you know, it's really easy to just look away from what's happening. And I get that because it's very overwhelming. It's very disturbing. But I think we're all going to be asked, you know, whether it's this month or in the coming months, to really make a stand for what we most believe in. Because if we don't, we do run the risk of one day waking up and things we just took for granted would always be there could be gone. So along with courage comes the second piece, the second theme, which is discernment, which is interesting because although water is associated with fear, the other quality that's associated with water is wisdom. And one aspect of wisdom is discernment. And discernment, when we're talking about in relationship to courage, is using our intuition, the felt sense in the body, to know what are the right words, what is the right action for me to do, and what's not. Because maybe it's not appropriate for you, for whatever reason, to go and protest at a detention center. But maybe what you do is watch somebody's children so that they can go. Or your action might be writing letters, donating money for causes that are being threatened. And we all have a role to play. It doesn't have to look the same for each person, but we can all make a stand in some way to say, I am for love. I am for human decency and human dignity. That's the first part of discernment. The other part, which is really how that word as a theme came to mind, is we also have to discern when we need to take a break and when we need to step away from the world. And that too is equally important. Because I have to be honest, I broke down a little bit recently. I really got quite overwhelmed with what was happening and became very dysregulated. And I needed to take a break. I needed to go back in and fill myself up with a sense of power and love and strength. And we all need to know when it's time to do that. So on that day, actually, when I was it was more than a day. It was a couple of days that I was dysregulated. This is the funny part. I kept hearing the song in my mind, and a lot of my messages do come from songs. So this one was so bizarre because I've never listened to a lot of country music. This was an old Kenny Rogers song, The Gambler, and it was specifically the lyrics that you gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. And I don't think that the message that was coming through was we should go all start gambling. I think it was we need to know when we need to fold that computer down, when we need to, hold back from the news, because it is a lot. And we have to be careful how we take in information, which is interesting because again, later that day, I was in class, teaching class, and I often pull cards in class. And the card that came up, and why the word came up for me, was discernment. And specifically, this card was talking about the impact of all the stuff we take in through our senses. And when we, read or view or hear uplifting, inspiring things, that affects our consciousness in a positive way. And likewise, when we listen to, heavy, low, difficult, or not good, uplifting, spiritual kind of stuff, it weighs us down. And, the news is incredibly heavy. So we do need to take breaks, and I think we need to support each other with compassion, both compassion for ourselves and for others, because sometimes I'm going to need to be the strong one so my friend can fall apart, and she may need to be the strong one when I fall apart. And I think we also have to be careful about how easy it is to amp each other up. I've had a lot of conversations where like, oh my God, and then this, and it's all kind of hair on fire, which is fine. We need to express it. We need to be able to vent, but we also need to say, okay, let's stop if this is not becoming productive. Because when we become so up in our heads, so back into that fear space that we're dysregulated, we're not in our power. Our power is back in our hearts. So that's the other part of discernment that I think we need to consider. And with that, I will also have for you a practice video. I will link these two so that you can actually have some practices to help with both dealing with fear, dealing with fear and boosting that sense of courage from the heart, and also working on discernment, feeling into the body, what is right and what is right for me right now in this moment. So I will link that below. But I wanted to finish with this quote or poem, I guess, from Wayne Arneson. Okay, seems very appropriate for these days. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down, there is another truth. You are not alone. And I think we all need to take heart in that, support each other, and do what we can to stay in our hearts and keep standing up for love. All right. Thank you. I so appreciate you being here. If this was helpful or inspiring to you, please share this message. And it does help get the word out if you like these videos and subscribe to the channel. The algorithm then can reach more people, and that's ultimately what I want. Take care, stay strong, and I will see you soon. Bye.